This $20 billion natural gas project in northern Mozambique is the single biggest private investment in Africa. The government here hopes to reap as much as $100 billion in revenue over the next 25 years. That's more than 6 times the country's annual GDP. But what's meant to be a gas bonanza for one of the world's poorest countries is developing alongside a deadly insurgency. I'm Marc Davies for Bloomberg Quick Take. Here's what you need to know.
A gente corria lado para outro, a gente às vezes chorava, dizer, mas o que deve acontecer, meu bebê pequenino.
Aquele lado de Bonate morreram, mesmo lá na praia, lá onde eu tive, também morreram pessoas, e esse Al-Shabaab.
Since 2017, more than 2,600 people have died and 700,000 displaced as violent attacks spread in the Cabo Delgado province. In March, dozens of people were killed in a raid by Islamist militants just a few miles from the project site. French gas giant Total, in response, halted operations on its $20 billion venture for a second time in 2021.
They have done horrific things. They are still doing so.
They had seen bodies laying on the streets.
Thousands are making their way by foot, boat, and road. Some are being rescued by the UN's humanitarian air services.
Evidence suggests insurgents in Mozambique's north began as an Islamist sect in 2007. By the mid-2010s, it had shifted to armed jihadism. Since the insurgency began in 2017, attacks have ramped up significantly. In 2018, insurgents aligned themselves to Islamic State, and the following year, Mozambique experienced the sharpest rise in Islamist militant attacks worldwide.
The group carrying out attacks in the Cabo Delgado is known as Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab just means the youth in Arab. There is no known linkage with the group with the same name operating in Somalia. The first attack happened in 2017, but the group activity in terms of radicalization can be traced 5 years before.
The jury's still out on the root causes, but there's plenty of debate. Some researchers studying its origins point to poverty and economic exclusion as the main cause. Young marginalized people, the argument goes, became more susceptible to radicalization over time. Some observers say it's been made worse by growing investor and government interest in natural resources with no obvious or timely benefit for locals.
We must understand that we're talking about a very poor country. So poverty is everywhere in Mozambique. Young people unemployed are everywhere in Mozambique. What is specific to Cabo Delgado that those unemployed people can be recruited to join the group. The most important element to consider is the mobilization based in religious belief that people can fight to change the state, people can fight against the government of Mozambique.
I think that much of this really has to do with smuggling syndicates that have been operating for decades, for generations in the area. This is a really rural, marginalized area, and they therefore serve as a very fertile ground for recruitment. And the only source, in a sense, of employment of opportunity is through smuggling networks and through radicals that offer them some payment and some money. And it seems like the smugglers are partly attempting to protect their smuggling routes and building on local frustrations about the potential mass gas exploration that is developing, are able to recruit locals.
Mozambique's army has struggled to contain the violence so far. It's brought in Russian and South African private military companies to quell attacks with very little success. More recently, the state has started social programs targeting vulnerable young people, this in hopes of addressing discontent over a lack of jobs and opportunities. But for now, the conflict continues.
The results are very poor. Even with this assistance from private military company, this group managed to attack and occupy 5 district headquarters, so 5 towns. That is huge in less than a year. Mozambique fought a civil war, 16-year civil war, and did not see such a situation of attacking and occupying district towns like what is happening here.
The region and regional governments like South Africa have long been aware of the emerging problem. But the government in Maputo, like most governments, have said, guys, this is a national problem. We will deal with this nationally. So there's a lot that Southern Africa, the Africa Union, and the international community can do. But eventually, it's all dependent upon the will and the capacity of the government in Maputo. This is their territory. And law and order and combating this insurgency primarily lies there.
The country emerged from a devastating 15-year civil war in 1992, and even now it needs massive funding for development, especially in poorer regions. Gas discoveries off the coast, one argument goes, could be the developmental jackpot the government's looking for. But like in many countries, natural resource wealth doesn't necessarily guarantee economic development or jobs for ordinary people.
It is true that very few of these kind of capital-intensive projects benefit locals. What happens is you get an entire enclave economy, in this case largely an offshore economy, of highly paid expatriates producing limited jobs with all the money, all the consultants going offshore. And none of the locals have the skills to benefit from this. This is an old problem, and you have to find a way of making sure that some of the revenues flow back into the area, either through investment by government, getting the taxes and the income from this. Very few countries, Botswana being one of the exceptions, Australia, Canada, and others, have been able to turn a resource bounty into a real broad-based development initiative. We've seen this in Angola, in Nigeria, where elites seize upon the massive revenue streams that are coming in, and then use that not for the development of the general populace, but to their own benefit. And it requires really a capable government with appropriate compliance regimes to make sure that some of these benefits flow back into the region. It requires a Mozambican government that is really committed to the development not only of Maputo, but to all of Mozambique.